Hey everybody, it's Steve and welcome to Wackadoo Brewing. This is Wackadoo Unhinged. Today I am, as always, here with my co-host, Denis, and the Brew Squatch, aka Shaun, and our special guest today, none other than Mr. Joe Reagan. Joe, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, this is my pleasure, and it was so good to be able to reach out and talk to you. For people who don't know, Joe Reagan is also running for Congressional District 5 here in Colorado. And we've talked on the show a few times about my interactions with some of the other people that are running in our district. And then I openly said it, 2 or 3 episodes ago, that I absolutely support you.
Thank you.
Which is a crazy thing to say, one candidate to another, because I'm also running in the same district, but I'm running as an independent.
Yep.
And absolutely on the Democratic side, or Republican side for that matter, I think you are the best candidate we've got right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And we've talked a lot about this offline over the last few months since I started running, that it's really opened my eyes to how it all works. And you are the only candidate I've seen, before we get too deep into everything else, I wanted to say, because this is fresh in my mind, you are the only candidate I've seen that's not constantly hammering people for money or saying that we have to do this to flip the seat. It's all about the money, even though it's not about the money.
Right.
And like we talked about this at one of the debates, that everybody was getting up there, they're slamming their opponents, saying they have to flip the seat and they need your money to do it. Mm-hmm. And I have never seen that on yours.
You know, and it's funny because I get asked that a lot. They're saying, well, you're going to get outspent. It's like, well, guess what? If money was everything, then you'd have Mayor Cuomo in New York City right now. And there's plenty of other examples in the past couple of years of where Democrats and Republicans have been able to be successful at getting elected based not on just money. Yep. And of course, financing a good team is important.
Yes.
But money is not everything. You need quality candidates that represent what's happening in their community. And that's what we've been lacking, is putting someone forward that really understands the needs of El Paso County and Colorado Springs, because we really are a unique district.
We are.
And every person I talk to outside of the state doesn't fully recognize exactly how unique of a community that we have, the unique needs of all the different aspects of it. And I love it when people say, well, it's 54% unaffiliated voters in El Paso County.
Yep.
But they are not a single voting block. And I think that's what gets missed is, how are these people voting? How are they making their selection of candidates? And it's not the traditional pathway that you would see in other districts outside of ours.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things. We're huge fans of Brandon Herrera down in Texas. Mm-hmm. He's a podcaster, the AK guy, things like that. He's been a huge proponent for the Second Amendment. He's actually testified before Congress, and he was almost the head of the ATF at one point.
I don't think it was like official.
Yeah,
it was a recommendation.
Yeah. But he got outspent 13-1 when he ran last term, and lost by 407 votes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that was it. 13-1, he got outspent, and still almost won the thing. And this year, it looks like he is going to win it. And it's incredible. It's not always about the money. Money does help. There is a certain amount of money that is needed.
Yes.
But it's not just the money. Like, that was one of the big ones, and I wrote this down so I would remember this. This is a legitimate direct quote. We need money to show the super PAC that our super PAC is better. We need another $250,000 to help flip this seat. The physical report is about to come out, and we need your money to show we are a better candidate.
Yep.
That is a direct quote from somebody in our district.
We need more money to show the other guy that we're better.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like that was the whole point, just to be able to say that we raised more money, so obviously we're better.
And so you see this, and so when you look at, and let's use the last presidential election as an example, and actually the past 3, where Donald Trump was outspent both times as well, and yet still was able to win because the way that he was, and I would say that, you know, my personal belief is that he sold us not exactly what we were getting, but was outspent and still managed to do it. And I think that this is the disconnect that we see, is whether it's Republican or Democrat, the donor class does not understand the needs of the majority of Americans. And so they're missing the mark when they get behind candidates that don't really understand what it means to be a small business owner, to be a working family that's trying to put food on the table for kids and balance all of that stuff that goes along with it. And that's where that authenticity matters, building the trust of community matters. And I really believe that this election cycle is there's 2 major things that are happening. One is this pushback against just that corporate candidate mentality. And 2 is who really has the authenticity and trust of voters? Because this is not about Democrat versus Republican anymore. It is about who really represents the interests of the community. It's almost like we're changing the language that we use to describe ourselves politically. When people say, well, I'm socially liberal but fiscally conservative. It's like, what does that mean?
Yes.
Describe for me what that means.
Oh, I didn't know what most of these terms meant until I started running. When people are like, well, far left, far right, liberal, whatever you are, and all those key terms, I'm like, I'd never understood what that meant.
And most voters don't.
Yeah.
And what we found, and what I found, and this is my second cycle running.
Don't.
Well, and so we did a little documentary where we invited people to come in off the streets and just talk about issues that are important to them. And so in politics, we often break things down into policy. And it's that left or right or centrist or whatever. But that's not how people experience policy.
No.
People their lived experiences is what drives their relationship to policy.
They don't wake up in the morning and be
connection,
like, oh, I'm this or I'm that. No, that's not what governs your life.
And so what mistakes get made by some of these candidates is that they say, well, if we just push to the center, then that's what's going to win.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what does that mean? And does the center mean something to the average voter that doesn't know what center means?
Yeah.
And it's about connecting what you actually want to achieve with the lived experiences of the majority of people in your district. And that's what's been missing.
And that was why I went down to the library for your guys' Democratic meeting, even though I wasn't allowed to speak.
Yep.
I still went down there because I wanted to hear not just what you were saying or what a particular candidate was, but like overall, how does this work? And listening to some of the candidates speak, and there were a few of them there that were really good, like you. And there were others that got up there and spoke, and the audience, you could watch them tune out.
Yep.
They'd heard it 100 times before from everybody else, and it's like you're not saying anything that's resonating with them. And I think that's very important when you watch the way some of these people speak. They're talking at people, not with them or to them.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
Yep. And when you look electorally here, where we've seen successes and changes, it's been less about taking a hard stance one way or the other, but more how do you build a coalition of voters to get something accomplished? And when you look at El Paso County, highest concentration of veterans in the country.
Yes.
With over 94,000 veterans live in El Paso County, plus the 40,000 active duty service members that live here as well.
Yeah.
That you don't see that anywhere else.
No, and you don't hear a lot of the candidates talking about them.
Right.
Or they offer the lip service.
Yep.
Oh, we support our troops. Well, what are you doing?
Show me.
Yeah, like when Colorado Springs started the marijuana tax, they had earmarked 20% of that to go to veterans care, veteran health, and which would have been almost $800,000, and $250,000 went to the health care, and the rest of it got sent to other places, special projects.
Mostly public safety.
Yeah. But they had set it aside when the vote was approved that 20% would go to veteran care and veteran services. And a quarter of that actually went where it was supposed to.
Yep. And so one of the things that I'm most proud of here in El Paso County, if you're familiar with the Next Chapter program, that was a pilot program that is now being fully funded through the Proposition KK tax. So that's the tax on guns and ammunition. That money was that bill was passed with the understanding that money was going to go directly towards mental health resources for the veteran community. And so we are seeing those dollars flow through here to El Paso County to fund those sorts of programs that reduce barriers to veterans' health care, veterans' mental health, and all the downstream things. We talk about suicide prevention. So often we talk about crisis intervention, but there's a whole lot of things that happen up until that point where if we can intervene earlier, we see a far greater outcome for the veteran at a much less cost. And I think that's when I love when people sit there and say, well, I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative. I was like, well, then why are we opting to spend thousands of dollars in crisis intervention instead of the hundreds of dollars it takes for preventative care?
Yeah, preventive medicine is always cheaper and more effective.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot easier on everybody to prevent the crisis than to deal with the crisis.
Yep. All right. Another one of the things I had on here, and actually you brought it up, so thank you. You beat me to it. This is your second time running.
Yes.
So what have you learned from the first one to this one, and what are you trying to do different this time?
Yeah. So the number one thing that we ran into, and I'm one of those people that I believe in transparency, right? I'm 100% honest of what went wrong in the last cycle. And there's some of it was inside of our control and some of it was outside of that control. I was the last person to enter that race. And so going from, if you looked at where I am today versus where I was last cycle, I'd only been a declared candidate for less than 3 months by the time we came up to the caucus and assembly process. And so I didn't have that name recognition. I didn't have trust of some of the key stakeholders here in the community. I knew a lot of people, but not all of them were politically engaged. And so that really hurt us going into caucus and assembly. And then in order to get the campaign kind of the machine going, we never really got fully spun up. And so now we've had a full 2 years to build out that mechanism. So we've got a strong network of volunteers. I've got arguably the best team in Colorado Springs when it comes to engaging
Yours
and mobilizing
are very
voters.
active.
Yeah.
It's not just random posts or paid ads. I see your people out there.
And that's the thing is the organic reach that we have through our social media, through our volunteer engagement. That's what's driving that. That's what's driving the engagement. And when you can do that, you see that far greater return on investment. It's one of the things I use all the time is, hey, listen, whether we're talking about running a campaign or running the budget in Congress, the area that sets me apart is that as a nonprofit leader, there's nobody that can stretch a budget like I can. Because as a nonprofit leader, it's exactly what I do each and every day.
You have to make every dollar go as far as possible.
And you do that by, again, leveraging volunteers, figuring out how you can get that story in front of new audiences. Because I think, and when I'm critical of our local party, and even the national party, the biggest challenge is here in El Paso County, I mean, I go to dozens of events a week. And if it's not hosted by the Democratic Party, I'm not seeing the people that I see at Democratic Party events.
Absolutely. I mean,
because they're
when
not
me and you were
engaged.
there at the Blue Collar Union one, it was me, you, and like one other person. And it's where are all the other represented? That doesn't matter.
And that's when you, and the biggest challenge, and I think the lesson that I learned as a nonprofit person is recognizing the fact that if you allow yourself to get constrained into, well, these are my people and I'm only going to talk to my people, you are not doing the best job possible to expand the reach of your mission. Whether that mission is supporting veterans through a nonprofit or running for office, you've got to constantly reach new people where they're at. And just putting out those same events in the same forums isn't going to work. The other thing that was outside of our control is that when you look at the way that the election went down. So last cycle, there was a competitive primary on both sides. And quite frankly, a lot of unaffiliated voters saw the two Republican candidates, they saw one as a greater threat and voted on the Republican ticket because they wanted, not because they wanted Jeff Crank in office, but because they didn't want Dave Williams on the ballot. And so I've had over 100 people that sat there and said, Joe, I can't believe you lost. Watching you in debates, I thought you were a shoo-in, so voted the Republican ticket because I didn't want to see Dave Williams. And then on the down ballot side, the only competitive race in the Democratic primary was my race. On the Republican side, there were a number of competitive primaries where people looked at those candidates and said, I don't want that person representing me. And so I'm going to vote this ticket to make sure that the more moderate Republican makes it onto the primary ballot.
The lesser of two evils. We talk about that one a lot. Unfortunately, that's how most voting has gone. A lot of people I talk to either don't vote or don't care. They don't care who they're voting for as long as it's the lesser of the evils. And I'm like, that should not be your options. There should be a good person on that ticket, no matter what party you're in. And people who, you shouldn't just follow party lines. It's who is the best to be my representative. And we have to take, this one's not as bad, so that's who I'm going to vote for. And so I've been trying to get as many people as I can just to go out and vote. Not even for me. I don't care. It's getting out and voting.
Show up.
Like I've been talking to a lot of people that either weren't registered or haven't voted in years, and I'm like, you need to get in this. You need every vote. Well, my vote doesn't matter. I'm just one person. Well, if you take 10,000 people that you don't think your vote matters, that's a lot of votes. And that does matter.
Well, and like I said, I lost by 486 votes in an election where 42,000 people voted.
Where Bober, was it District 4, I think, won by like 45 votes or something like that.
There's been a couple of close ones in CD3 and CD4.
So
and then if you look
matters.
here in El Paso County, House District 16, Stephanie Vigil lost by a vote.
Exactly. So if two people had come in, it would have been all the difference. So your vote really can mean something.
It does.
Yes.
But I love when you talk about the fact that this whole idea of I have to vote for the lesser of two evils. And again, where the parties, I think, get it wrong is putting forward, and this is where the purity test that we talk about get in the way of saying, well, we need the perfect candidate for our party. No, you don't. You need the perfect candidate for your district. And when you give people that person that they want to vote in the affirmation style of, I like that person, I believe they represent me.
Yes.
Here's an interesting fact. So if you look at the last election, so 54% of El Paso County voters voted in favor of the constitutional amendment to the state constitution for pro-choice. Yet, only 42% voted for the candidate running as a pro-choice candidate. So 12% of people voted for women's reproductive freedom, but didn't vote for the pro-choice candidate. And you start to question, why is that?
Yeah.
And it's all those other factors that go into the fact of like, I might see myself as this, but if you're not going to address these other underlying issues, then I can't throw my support behind you for that reason. And that's where I think El Paso County is unique, is we are far more purple than we've been allowed to be. And that's what's been missing.
We talked about that too, about start getting away from this blue and red and start being more purple. Because you have such a massive diversity, especially here. Because veterans, we come from all walks of life, every demographic, every race, color, creed, religion, financial status. Veterans are the entire spectrum. I've got guys that come in here after serving 4 years and they're dirt poor, barely making ends meet. And just a couple days ago, I had a retired 3-star general that owns 3 companies here in town walk in. The same place. So we cover everything. So it isn't just, this is where I'm from, this is what happens. We have such a to use the old word, a melting pot here in our district, because we have so many people that retire here or get out of the military and stay here or for some reason move here afterwards.
And this is something that I've seen both on the political side, but also on the workforce development side, is when you're engaging with employers that don't have that veteran background, so many of them look at, you are a veteran or you're not a veteran. And as far as they're concerned, veterans are all the same. And we all know that that's not true. We bring different skills, we bring different experiences. And while I think all of us would agree that when we look at our veteran status, we're all proud of that. We don't want to take away from another veteran. But we are bringing to our lives different sets of experiences and backgrounds that reflect that diversity of the population. And so what is dangerous is when you may start to make assumptions of how is the veteran population going to vote. That's not the right question.
No, you can't lump us all into
question.
You can't lump all veterans into the same thing. I've seen all walks of life from our community. Just hear me talking to people, all the veterans, and you see everything from far left, far right, independent, Democrat, Republican. I'll never ever vote again. Everything in between there.
Absolutely.
All right. So as far as with your military service, you are. No, not the first. Okay, good. You are the second other infantry guy that I've had in here on the podcast.
Nice.
And Shaun, you had a question for him for that.
All right, so Miss Renee was giving us a quick rundown. Said you did some time with 10th Mountain, started with infantry, went into military intelligence. Just,
So I mean, I guess
we're me and him especially are military nerds. So
it's funny. My youngest son is also very into the military thing as well. So we've actually spent the entire car ride over here talking about different mortar rounds, and I probably got into far more detail than I really should have with an 11-year-old. But
see, now that is a conversation I've been right there with him. Like,
please tell me more. So my experience, So I went to a private military school. And actually, my path that I thought I was going to go was I was going to be a high school teacher. That's what I wanted to be. And I was in college when 9/11 happened. And again, being in a private military school, there were a lot of my classmates that were already going that military track. Their parents often had a tight military connection. And so made the decision at that moment, was like, no, this is where I'm needed. I need to be serving in the military. And Army felt like the right mix for me, or the right match for me. And then, when it came to choosing what do I want to do, infantry was just kind of the right, to me, it was the right path. It was like, hey, I don't want to just take the easy road. I've spent my entire life always choosing the harder path, the hard right. And so going infantry seemed like the natural fit, and going to airborne school and ranger school, and those are the right things. Those for me just seemed like the right thing to do. And then when it came to choosing a unit, at the time, 10th Mountain was the most deployed unit in the military. And so when it came to, I'm joining the military because I believe in serving and I want to serve and I want to do my best, going 10th Mountain was the way to go. And I stand by that. It was a great unit. I was a scout platoon leader for 287 Infantry. And 16 months in combat with those guys, and they're some of the best people I've ever worked with, and doing some of the most difficult missions. And a kind of a funny story is we're sitting in a battalion planning session, getting ready to go on this. It was one of those missions that came out of nowhere and nobody really knew what to do with it. And the S3 looks at the battalion commander and says, we should send Joe and the scouts. The battalion commander's like, why? He goes, if you look at what every other platoon leader has done in this battalion, he goes, Joe and his team have shown consistently how well they are at jumping through hoops when nobody else knows what to do. So they're the natural fit for this. But that was really the entirety of my career, was even as a young officer, getting assigned those missions where nobody really knew what we were going to do with it. And when I got back from my first deployment, I made the transition over to the intelligence side of things. I ran the S2 shop for the same battalion. And then when I got back, it was kind of funny. They looked at me and they're like, well, you've already done your branch qualifying position. So they sent me to DC, and I went to go work in the intelligence community. And it was...
S2 shop, what's that?
That is the intelligence shop. So I ran intelligence operations for, at first, my battalion, which is about 800 people. And then actually my brigade commander really liked me. So he actually brought me up, and I became the brigade intelligence officer for what's about
if you're
about
good at your job,
people.
Congratulations. Here's more work.
And that's, again, it's the way
So
it goes.
all the S shops are the headquarters for the battalion. They each shop specifically deals with one thing. Like you always hear soldiers bitching about S1 in our paperwork. So S1 handled all your leave, all your pay, things like that. S2 shop is your intelligence. It's where I had to go.
As soon as you said S1, it was a pain, and she starts.
Oh yeah. So S3, and then there's some that are only during a deployment or active combat. That S shop stands up, and then S6 is all the supply and commo and stuff.
It's, S6
been a while.
S6 is going to be all the human.
That's
human
the one that
components.
comes up pretty much during combat. They stand
do
up
all the contracting
yes,
stuff.
there you go. S4? That's security.
S4 is the supply.
Oh god, that's supply. Okay, there you go. It's been a long time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's one of those. It's crazy to think about when you said that. You're exactly right. Because like my first tour in Iraq was 15 months, and it was. At the time, you're like, man, this is awful. And then when you get done, you're like, man, you can't ever experience a life like that again. Yep. Nothing brings you together, and the suck is so great. It's like,
well, and it
trauma
really does
bonding
connect you. It's definitely
syndrome.
trauma bonding. And for me, over the course of that 16-month deployment, literally my entire platoon was wounded at least once.
Jeez.
And so we had a casualty rate that exceeded 100%. And that's a rough deployment. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it took me a long time to really come to terms with what that actually meant. Yeah. And for me, it was actually Father's Day of 2019, where I got a phone call in the morning, and it was one of my former team leaders had taken his own life the day before. Oh, shit. And that has been one of the things I've really struggled with, is that despite all those injuries that we received in combat, I lost more soldiers to suicide after coming home than I did in actual combat. We've talked about that
for years. I've lost more of my friends and people I served with after than we ever did.
Yep. I've heard that a lot.
Yep. Yeah, that's scary.
And that's what's driven so much of my post-surface career is this idea of, hey, we've had this experience and we need to be taking care of one another. And for me, when Mike took his own life, what really stuck with us is that all week we knew something was wrong. So the signs were there, but we didn't have the tools on what to do. Yeah. And that's where that tragedy occurs. And so breaking down those barriers to mental health care, and not just for veterans. And what I've learned is that while the veteran space got me involved in mental health care, it's helped me to understand the crisis that we're seeing for the mental health crisis for teens, for LGBTQ plus individuals, and all these other things. Right? Mental health, we have such a stigma associated with it. It doesn't matter where the trauma comes from. We're afraid to ask and talk about mental health in a way that we would talk about the flu. Yeah. So we can break down those barriers. That's where we can see success for fellow veterans, for teens, for any individual that's struggling. And our seniors. Yeah. We don't talk enough about the mental health crisis that exists within our senior network right now, because loneliness is a huge problem for them.
Yeah. All right, so I got to ask then, because we were talking about this. What is your worst day ever award you got? What was that for?
I always say the worst day ever was actually the flight to my second deployment. And it was that pain of sitting around a bunch of people. It was their first deployment, and seeing and experiencing how that kind of excitement is probably the right word, but like they're expressing that, oh yeah, we're going to go do this. And that knowing of what doing it actually means. What does it mean to experience combat and the trauma and all the difficulty that's associated with it. And really that recognition of the fact that you are on a plane and you know that there is somebody on that plane or multiple people on that plane that will never step foot on U.S. soil again. Yeah. And that was the longest 24 hours of my life, to sit there and just have that in my space and to deal with that and recognize what that was going to look like.
Yeah, I always found that was harder, especially as the deployments went on.
Yep.
Like by the time I'd gotten on my third deployment, and then I'm seeing all these brand new people that have never been and never experienced it. And it's like, it's hard to explain to them. And then at the same time, how numb you can become to it. And you look at them and it's like, I used to be like that. Now it's just, this is normal day to day for me.
Yep.
And it's hard, sometimes because that switch doesn't shut off so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads into the transition process when you're leaving the military, and now that is completely absent, and you no longer have that support network of people around you that share that experience. Yeah. And right, so that's the worst day, but the best day are those moments where you're with those people that you went through that experience with of combat, and can really enjoy what it means to live in this country.
Yeah.
And there's some great moments there and I think of it would have been the 2007 New York State Fair. Journey was the headliner there, and going there with a bunch of folks that I had just gotten back from a deployment with, and it was a blast. It was a great time. But that's what it's all about. And you do, once you get away from that, you miss it. You have to find that sense of community and that sense of purpose again.
And that was the whole point why we started the brewery, was to build that back up and to have all the people I'm surrounded with now. Almost all my staff are veterans or direct family members of veterans. Yeah. I mean, he grew up outside Fort Knox, and he's been my friend for 10 years. So like the whole veteran community's adopted him. Yeah. And it's that when people can come in and just instantly right away they know you're a veteran, and they know that it's safe to talk. And but you were like you said, we talked about it on the podcast a couple times, but like when I got out of the Army, I got out December 2011, right at 56 days after my last tour in Iraq. And it was, here's your DD-214, good luck. Yep. There was no program, there was no reintegration training, there was nothing. I got divorced, got out of the Army, and I lost everything all at once. My support network, my identity as a self, everything just disappeared. And that was, those first couple of years out of the Army were the hardest in my life. Trying to, because I joined at 17, so I was trying to figure out who am I now that I'm not this. Yeah, I mean, grandfather was infantry, my dad was infantry, I was infantry. That's what you knew. My family was military, and then suddenly I was out in this real world, and it was scary because nothing worked. Nothing. Your normal reaction to anything did not work.
There was a great article I was reading the other day, and was talking about how, for a lot of us, especially, it seems like infantry or infantry type jobs, and that includes law enforcement, first responders that are experiencing that sort of real trauma. It recalculates our brain, and so that when it comes to extreme stress, we react very well. Yeah. But small nuances, it almost triggers the brain to be like, whoa. And you get that total overreaction to the smallest things. Yeah. And it does. It requires that ability
I haven't seen that as an employee.
Well, it's like it's more stressful, or there's more going on in here, the better I work and the more focused I am. When there's nothing going on, then I'm bored and then I'm losing my mind because there's not enough. So I need a amount of stress every day to feel normal.
The brew system is on fire, cool as a cucumber. The seat sink springs a little leak, and his hair's on fire.
No, and I think but when I engage with non-military people in workforce development, that's something I talk about with them, and saying, hey, if you want someone that's cool in a crisis, this is what that looks like in practice. Because one of the things that really frustrates me is so many people are like, oh, well, you're in the military. You're great at following orders. I was like, that's not how it works.
That's not.
It's not how it works. In fact, it's the opposite of, generally speaking, we're given very vague instructions and then gone and sent out and try and figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
And so where people sit there and say, well, you have the discipline as in just following orders. No, discipline comes into I know what I need to accomplish. I'm going to do the things that need to get done in order to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people get some of those words confused. You're absolutely right.
And that's why people like you are so successful as small business owners, because you're able to bring that discipline in your decision making and how you do your planning to make sure that you're running a successful enterprise.
I don't borrow $1 million and then just hope everything works out all right. Yeah. I've seen enough of that.
Believe me, I see it every
day. Give some mission parameters and then get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. You give me a general, go take that hill. I'll figure out the rest. I just need a broad stroke, what are we doing?
Tell me what you need done.
Yeah.
Let me figure it out.
What do I need done, and what are my resources available?
Yeah, no, which are never enough.
Yep.
Yeah, but we were always joking about that. That's the
That's
one
when tactical acquisitions come in.
the one good word I learned from the military: facilitate. Everything is to facilitate, and people are like, "What do you mean?" Everything we do is to allow something else to happen. Every mission you have, that's not the end statement. That is simply, especially like writing an op order, or whatever it is that the officers needed when I was in, was just we're facilitating this.
Yep.
It's never an end statement. It's to continue that mission, to do this thing.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's my $10 word right there. Is facilitate.
No, and I think that so much of what's missing from the workforce today, and what the skills that employers are looking for, or the skills that entrepreneurs need, are exactly those sorts of things of understanding. Hey, I know I need to get something done, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
How do I get the tools needed and the resources together to get to that end state?
Yeah.
And that's where we have a disconnect between a workforce that wants to support veterans because they think it's the right thing to do, and that includes military spouses too, by the way.
Yeah.
And those that really understand the skill sets that are being brought to the workforce by our veterans and our military community.
Absolutely. All right, this is one we were kind of messing around with it earlier, and we were just kind of curious on this. This is for everybody. We were talking about jury duty.
Oh yeah.
So, he was talking about it because some people are afraid to register to vote because then that also sets you up on the jury duty pool. And I was thinking about it after he said it. I was wrong. It's not that I've been on jury summons one time, and I was actually in Iraq at the time, and that was the most hilarious. I got the letter, and I was like,
Not going to make that
don't
one.
think I'm going to make that one. But that's it. Of all my entire life, I've been summoned once, and I couldn't because I was deployed.
I think it was like a week after I moved the last time. I got a letter in the mail for jury duty, and I was so happy. I called the night before, and my entire section got thrown out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like most of the time, it's even if you get selected, or not even like selected, just they send you something. You don't even go there. Or even if you do, it's like you show up and then there's like, no, we don't need you. So it's like you don't have to have this long.
Have you been on jury duty?
I have. I actually sat on a jury.
Part of me thinks it'd be fun.
You know what? I think
do
it is
it.
something to experience, like to really understand the judicial process.
Well,
Yeah, not what you see on
It
TV about
was
how it
really
actually
neat.
works. Yeah.
And it was not an easy trial. It was a child rape case.
Oh.
And so it was really difficult to go through it. But it did give you that insight of like, hey, what is it really like to sit down with 12 strangers and determine the fate of someone that you don't know?
Yeah.
And to really understand how the judicial system works and to interact with the judges and the lawyers and how they're interacting with you. It really was. It was a neat experience. I thought I was going to be thrown out. My grandfather was a cop. And so usually if you have a law enforcement connection, they're like, nope, you're out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I never thought about it until you asked me that today. And I was like, one time in 28 years that I've been available to be on jury.
Like I said, that's the one and only time I've gotten anything about jury duty, and I called the night before, and nope, we don't need you to show up. Cool.
Nice. Yeah, there you go. Congratulations on the caucus, by the way.
Thank you.
From my understanding, because I've never been part of an actual caucus, it was you and Jessica Killian. You guys moved forward. Now, what does that mean as far as for the other candidates? Can they still be on? That's it. Done.
Nope. So there's two paths. Well, let's say there's three pathways to get onto the ballot in
I know
November.
that there's the signatures, right?
So there's signature. So
That's what I have to
There's
do.
signatures, and there's caucus.
Yeah.
And then if you go and bypass the party process as an independent, there's just the signatures.
Yay.
So for you can
Yeah.
get 1,500 signatures from any voter in El Paso County.
Yep.
As a Democrat, you need to get 1,500 signatures from a Democrat in El Paso County
Yeah.
in order to qualify that route. If you do that, you don't have to go to caucus.
Okay. So they had to have already done that before the caucus.
Yes.
The caucus is like the end for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you have to have, if you have the signature, you don't have to go to caucus. If you choose to go to caucus and do both, you only need 10% of the vote at caucus to get on the ballot.
Okay. Instead of the, was it 30%?
The 30%, right?
Yeah.
So if you go pure caucus, you just need 30% of the vote, and that puts you on the primary ballot.
Okay.
And so then the primary will choose the party candidates, then you move forward to the November election.
All right. So between now and June, it's Jeff Crank, you,
Yep.
Jessica Killian, and me.
Yep.
There we are.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I never understood. I guess I won't say his. Well, it doesn't matter. He dropped out now. But why he switched from being an independent to a Democrat so late in the process?
Yeah, I mean, you never really know. I mean, I think I think there's a misperception of when you have this 54% of unaffiliated voters. We sit there and say, oh, well, that's 54% of people that would want an independent candidate. That's not necessarily what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at the support needed to run in a general election, having the support of a major party is very beneficial to move forward.
Absolutely.
And so in this district specifically, I think the challenge is if you are running as a Democrat or Republican, you have a section of the electorate that are just going to vote that D or R.
Because
they don't care who it is, but you've already got that 40% of the vote
locked in.
That's locked in.
Yep.
And so then as a Republican, right, this is an R+5 district.
Yeah, I think they have 38%, and Democrats have 20 or 19%.
So those are registered in the parties. But then when you look at voting behavior, the R+5 essentially means that there's 55% of voters that are going to lean Republican.
Yes.
And so those are the people that you need to convince to move one way or the other. And I think that is what's unique about this district is you have a far greater number of swing voters and split ticket voters than you do in other districts. Yeah. And so that's the funny math that you have to figure out of where you're going to get those
That's
other
why
votes.
I was wondering if the Republican Party had done that on purpose or if nobody else really wanted to run as a Republican, because it looks like everybody's throwing behind Crank, even though from what I've seen, nobody likes him.
I'm kind of curious on that as well.
I thought anybody would have run against him. I mean, I had people asking me if I wanted to run Republican because then I had a better shot, and I was like, no, I'm an independent. That's that. But looking at it now, it's like, man, I mean, almost anybody could have had a good shot at that.
Well, and so this is the challenge I think that both parties are facing is that when you look at the voters that are engaged in the early process, so at the Democratic caucus, you had 600 people. Yeah. 600 people determined which Democrats were going to be on the ballot for the primary in June. Yeah. It's a really, really small number of people. Yeah. And those are really informed, very activist people that tend to represent the more swing side of the party. Yeah. Or the more liberal side of the party. Same thing with the Republicans. Those people that are engaged in that caucus process are your hardcore, very conservative Republicans that are all in on some of these things. And that doesn't always reflect the majority of people, even within the party. No. And so I think that's part of that challenge of the process. And what's unique about Colorado elections is that now we introduce, when you go to primary, that unaffiliated voter gets the choice of they can vote in the Democratic primary or the Republican primary. And so it leads to this situation of, this is why I'm a proponent of ranked choice voting, is because when you put these candidates in front of people and the parties choose the one that fits the party model better, that doesn't reflect the majority of voters. No. Where if you look at like Alaska, Louisiana or even California does a jungle primary, where you take the top 4, you put them all together, and then you use ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting to determine who actually has the actual true majority of the vote. That was on the ballot last cycle, and I wish it would have passed because I think that's the sort of thing that
that's
helps
one of those
moderate.
big things I never had a clue about before I started running was that every single state completely different rules because especially as an independent. So you guys were able to start getting signatures in January, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and all of that was done by March, and then you had your caucus. You guys are all set. Everything's in line. You're going into your primaries. I can't even start anything till April 1st, tomorrow. Yep. And they won't even tell me when I can get my signature paperwork until after April 1st. Right. So I don't even know when. Sometime in April I will get my paperwork. Yeah. But I'm not even told. I don't get to know when I'm going to get it or how that's going to work. And then I just know my deadline is June 30th. Yep. And so by then, I'm out of the primaries. I'm out of the caucuses. I can't be involved in any of that. So then it's after you guys do your primaries, then I know, then I'm part of the process again. Yep. There's this big gap in between. But that's why I started going to yours is because I wanted to see, how that worked on the Democrat and Republican side, and there's nothing to do on the Republican side because it's just Crank.
It's just Crank, yep.
Yeah, and he hasn't been to any town halls, any meetings, any of our debates.
Not even video.
No, not.
I find that's the one I kept because I understand where virtual
he's
engagement.
not going against anybody yet. Why try?
Yeah. Well, but part of the problem where people get really frustrated with the system is that the expectation of a representative is to be there.
Represent?
And to it's of course it's literally in the job description, but to be out there and to actually have the courage to engage with people that disagree with you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest thing, and I'll be critical of both Democrats and Republicans again, that so often we find ourselves where we're unwilling to have those difficult conversations.
Don't want to.
We don't want to have those conversations.
If you slip up one thing, then they've got a soundbite on you, or something like that. Like I love the one that you got to do earlier in the year, and I was disappointed that I didn't get invited to that one, but I already tried talking to them. But that had nothing to do with the Democrats or the Republicans. That was the people running it.
Yep.
But when you sat down and you were talking in there, a lot of them just say the same things over and over. And have you ever seen the movie The Campaign?
I don't think I
With
have.
Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell?
I will have to watch it this
You
weekend.
have to watch it.
Oh my God.
It's going to change your entire perspective on running. So it's a whole satire movie about a guy running for Congress.
An incumbent versus
An incumbent versus a new guy. But so much of it is dead on. Like when they ask a question and everybody says, well, thank you for asking me that question. I'd like to thank all the people for being here and thank you and thank
video
you.
evidence
And then never
obviously.
answer anything.
Yep.
But we watched that whole thing like an hour and 24 minutes. And a lot of it was just, it was fluff. And it's like, I want you to answer something. I want you to talk about, stop the same pandering and things like that. And it's like,
And this is where I think that voters get very frustrated is, right, so even talking to reporters, like this morning I was talking to another reporter, and they're like, well, you know, the anti-Trump sentiment is going to do this, and the economy is going to do that. And I was like, well, that's great. And we all know people are upset. We get the problem, right? All of us, we get the problem.
Yep. We don't have to
People
beat
are
that.
tired of hearing that we understand the problem. They want to know, what are we actually going to do?
Oh, yeah.
And have those
I've got this
conversations.
12-point plan.
Yep.
We'll get into it when
And
we
some
get
of that doesn't, and so like, and even that, when you go into details, and I've seen people that get out there and they're like, oh, if you go to my website, I have all these white papers.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these- well, guess what? You're a freshman member of Congress. You're not going to be able to achieve all that.
Thank
And
you.
So
the
philos-
burden of proof is on you.
Yep. And so philosophically, I think it's more important for people to understand, how do you think about problems?
Yeah.
How do you intend to solve problems and work towards those things? And I've used the example several times. Like if you look here in Colorado, Lauren Boebert's water bill was vetoed.
Yep.
And I look at that and say, if Lauren Boebert, and she and I probably don't agree on anything, but if she wants to help support Colorado get access to clean water, I'm going to work with her on that. Not because she's a Republican, not because she's whatever.
Yes.
It's because Coloradans deserve access to clean water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period. And that's something you can communicate to voters and say, hey, we talk about working across the aisle. Here's an issue that we are facing right now, right? If you look at last week, the states of the Colorado River Compact failed to meet the deadline.
Yep.
And so now the federal government is going to take over mediation on how we manage the Colorado River, which of course supports our water here locally.
Yeah.
We have a huge stake in this. As a brewer,
Oh, yeah.
water quality
Oh.
is everything.
And,
when it
and
comes
this
to-
year
Yep.
especially, water management
We've been talking about
and
this.
everything.
They're already doing the drought and the water restrictions and all that.
Yep.
Yet we just built a new Coca-Cola plant, or we're building a new Coca-Cola plant. They're talking about building an AI data center.
Yep.
Oh
It's like-
God, I just saw that earlier today. Oh,
And,
buddy.
I'm sorry, but
Can't
it's,
get on that one. I
we
don't have my
we
foil
can't
hat.
share something we don't have.
Yes.
Yeah. If,
Yep.
Really
And
just
this
have
is
that
where it's so like, and what's frustrating is I was just down in Phoenix this past weekend because my son had a baseball tournament, and there's more green lawns in Phoenix than we have here. And I'm like, wait a second, we're all sharing.
insane.
Why are you taking all our water?
Are they actually green or are they just the
that's-
rocks painted
no,
green?
it's actually
Yeah, right.
it's actually
That-
well.
that threw me
the
off so
humidity,
hard
the
the
humidity
first
in
time I went
Phoenix
out
is
to the
higher than
fucking-
here.
to the southwest.
Well, I mean, we've seen a bunch of times now where we had warmer weather than Honolulu.
Yep.
We had warmer weather than Florida.
Yep.
I'm watching all these other states, and it's like,
What's going on?
yeah. But I mean, we go through these cycles.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's like people forget the second we get a good, nice, wet year like last year,
Yep.
they're like, oh, things are
good.
all better now. We're good.
Yep.
Pass the buck.
Yep.
No,
No.
we go
Need
through
to-
like a 3 or 4 year cycle here in Colorado constantly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting about the AI data center piece, because I've had this conversation with a number of different unions. They use a lot of water, but consume very little. So when you look
I've
at
seen that recycling.
they're recycling it. And so actually, in a way of getting access to cleaner water, they can be beneficial in that process because they're bringing water in, they're using it to cool, they can actually filter it, and they can put it back into the system
Yeah.
in a cleaner in a cleaner state than when it came into it. And so like there's an advantage. It's got to be done properly.
Yeah.
And this is where putting regulations on how we design data centers so that we're making sure they are water neutral.
Yeah.
And same thing with energy. right? The energy usage component. I love this example, by the way. You know the innovation park out by the airport?
Yeah.
Did you know that we're about to spend, I think it's several $1 million to put a new electric substation out there because there's not enough power to feed the innovation center out there. And it's not an AI data center. I think they're just doing general like innovation stuff. And I was having a conversation with the director of the Colorado Springs Airport. And it's funny because he's talking about this challenge of developing the innovation center on the airport property. And then he goes into saying, well, the biggest complaint we have about the Colorado Springs Airport is no covered parking. And I'm sitting there, I'm like,
solar.
You have 10 acres minimum of open parking lot where we're all sitting there and saying, I don't want to park my car at the Colorado Springs Airport because if I leave it there in the summer, it's going to get destroyed by hail.
Yep.
Put up the solar panels, you're locally generating that power, and boom. And then we're offsetting things like, again, you talk about the Nixon plant.
Yep.
Right? We're keeping a coal power plant, which is the least efficient, dirtiest, most expensive form of power, and we're all going to pay the price on that. Not because it was the right move, but because it was an administration that sat there and said, no, we want to support King Coal more than what we want to support.
The problem I've seen
energy
with that,
users.
it's nothing against any kind of power, but to me, it's the knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
We're not building in steps to be like, hey, over the next 10 years, we're building all this new stuff. We need to start building that power now. Instead, they went, shut the coal down. We're going to transfer over to this, but it's not in place yet.
Yep.
Like, we don't have the solar, the wind, any other kind of power going to subsidize that. We're just going to shut it down and then charge you more.
So what you saw in the plant downtown is they transitioned to the natural gas turbines because what that allows to do, so the difference between coal and natural gas, coal, once it's going, it's got to go.
Yeah.
Natural gas, you can turn on and turn off. So as the base load shifts, you have a little more flexibility. So you do get that cost savings and energy efficiency.
But we're getting off natural gas.
But we're getting off natural gas too. But that is a good transition power. And then we talk about the
in the
small scale
meantime,
nuclear.
See, that's the big one we're all about. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
We're watching all these
I've
mini
been sitting here
reactors.
for a good couple minutes waiting.
Wait for that one?
Yeah, the mini reactors that can power an entire town, or they're talking about for some of these data centers building them. But we've been so scared of nuclear for the last 30 years over a couple of things that happened. And the last one, he's a huge nuclear guy. He knows all of this. But everything worked the way it was supposed to. It shut down safely. Everything was fine. But all they see is, oh God, nuclear reactor. You know. And
there were a few, I believe, alarms and gauges that malfunctioned, and there was a release of non-harmful material.
Yeah. But that's everybody
the
freaks
kind of
out.
stuff that dissipates
Everybody
in a
hears
matter of
nuclear and they're like,
hours.
"Oh my God, this isn't safe. It's so dangerous. We could kill everybody." And it's like,
And a huge proponent of it are the unions.
Yeah.
Because when we looking at small scale nuclear, those are a lot of high paying union based jobs that we need in this community. And we talk a lot, and a lot of people ask about the crisis that we're seeing in higher education. We're not talking about the demand that we're going to see within the trades.
Yeah.
And beyond just the trades, the workforce challenges that we face. Like the number one thing that gets brought up in everything that I do is how do we manage a workforce of the future that's going to be impacted by things like AI, like evolving technology? And the answer is, if you look at how unions run themselves, and not from the advocacy standpoint, but you're part of a union, there's a upskilling program associated with that, right? They have a process where as a union member, throughout the course of your career, you can continually upskill so that you can remain competitive in your workforce.
Yeah.
We need to emulate that in other aspects of the workforce, because when you talk to college kids, 5 years out from college, what they learned is now completely irrelevant.
yep, doesn't matter at all.
And so while we have to make those changes to college education, make sure curriculum is more responsive to the needs of the economy, we've also got to figure out that way of, hey, I'm in my mid-40s, and everything that I've ever had from an education system is completely irrelevant.
Yes.
How do I stay competitive in a workforce where there's nothing that I can show that says I can have these skills?
Yes.
But, and I the first resume I had the number of words per minute I could type. Because in the 1990s,
Hey, that was big deal.
was
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And now it's, you got to be Microsoft proficient and Google Suite proficient. Well, 5 years from now, people are going to be saying, if you can't use AI to write custom algorithms, you're not going to be valuable to the white-collar workforce. Yeah. How do we make sure that we have that skill set? And especially in a community like ours, where we have such a strong defense presence, that we're going to need those skills available to people to be able to do that. And that comes from community colleges. That comes from companies getting incentives to train their workforce and keep them
Absolutely.
competitive.
Some of the best companies, I haven't had a lot of jobs other than, I've owned a couple of businesses in the time in the military, but in between there was one company I worked for that always had that incentivized training. Like, whatever your job you're hired for, it's just like in the military, what they always tell you, learn 2 jobs above yourself. Always strive for that next job, that next position, the next promotion. And companies where they train you without, like here we got the TIP certification, the AED, first aid, CPR certification. I teach everybody who works here how to brew, things like jobs outside of just working the bar. And even if they ever leave here and go somewhere else, the certifications are theirs. The training is there. I just want to see them get better and improve.
Yep.
And I think more jobs need that instead of just, this is it. This is your entire career. I want you to sit right here in this office and do this thing.
Yep.
And it should be a constant improvement.
And and
that constant improvement creates employee loyalty. Like
Yeah.
you said, everybody's taught here. I could probably go to another brewery that's looking, get a job as an assistant brewer,
Yep.
and make probably 10, 12K a year more than I do now.
Probably, yeah.
But I'm not going to do that because he's the one who taught me. I've been here since the beginning. I have loyalty to this business.
Yeah.
This is where small business is the solution to so much of what we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
Is when you look at, so we talk about wage disparity and
Yeah.
the fact that for a Fortune 500 company, the average Fortune 500 CEO makes like 250 times what the average salary of their employees make. That doesn't exist in small business.
No,
Small
everybody
business-
here makes more money than I do.
And you're here in the midst of that is true. that is 100% true.
Yeah.
But then
By orders of magnitude, even.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then you dig into where like true innovation happens, and especially in a community like ours, that local flavor, right?
Yeah.
I can go anywhere and get Coors, but to get
Yeah.
that unique flavor to Colorado
Yeah.
Springs, that's something that only exists
Yeah,
within the small
you
business.
can't
community.
touch that anywhere. I mean, here in Colorado Springs, we have 29 different breweries.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we all get along and we all work with each other and we all send each other customers.
Yep.
If somebody walks in my door and tells me they're looking for some flavored beer that I don't have on tap,
Yep.
I will literally start calling around and find out what brewery has it, and I will send them there.
Yep.
And most of them will do the same back to me.
Yep.
And you don't see that in big chains or corporations.
Yep.
And
it lends itself to that small business ecosystem too,
Yep.
where you look at
we
and
help and depend on each
The
other.
amount of customers, us and Trinity, at ping pong back and forth.
Yeah,
In
before they
Storybook.
closed. Yeah, Storybook. The other breweries in town be like, oh, I was just over at this brewery, and they said to come here.
Yeah.
You don't see that in big anything.
And I had a conversation with the liquor store owner, and they were telling me the story of,
Yeah.
of Breckenridge Distillery.
Yep.
That's a local distillery, and they started super small.
Yep.
And they walked into a local liquor store and said, "Hey, can we put our product on your shelves?" And they said, "Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
And started with maybe a dozen bottles. They sell a dozen. They come back with 2 dozen.
Yep.
And now Breckenridge Distillery is one of the largest distillers in the country.
Absolutely.
But it started with that relationship between 2 small business owners and allowed it to thrive.
And we were talking about that before we started the podcast about one of the good things about Colorado is that we don't have the monopoly liquor stores.
Yep.
All of these are independently owned, every one of them.
Yep.
And because if there was a big chain here and you're not a huge distributor, they won't carry your stuff.
Right.
Because you can't supply what they want or how they need to. It's like, like Walmart, Safe. I don't know if Walmart in Colorado does hard alcohol. They don't. They don't.
No.
But like some of the places that do serve hard alcohol, you can't get into them unless you can cover all of them.
Yes.
And so, but the mom and pop ones, when we canned for a little while before the tariffs got out of control and we had to stop,
Yep.
we were in 6 liquor stores here in town, and that would not have been possible if they were all chains.
Yep.
Yeah. It was every one of these individually went and talked to the owners, we talked to the managers, and they carried our beer for a while.
Yeah.
And we could never have done that.
And it's frustrating for me as part of the economic development community is when you sit there and you have an administration that talks about wanting to support business, and the Republican Party has always been known as they're the party of business.
Yeah.
No, they're the party of big business.
Yes.
But in my mind, the Democratic Party has an opportunity to present itself as we're the party of Main Street. And we're the ones that are out there advocating for the fact that challenges of small business owners, you're working class Americans, just like the rest of us. And that's really, how do we empower that sort of creativity in the workforce to bring that and strengthen not only those jobs, but it keeps that money locally.
Here,
Yeah. You're not a big corporation that lives.
No, I'm not sending the money to another state, to my headquarters.
Yep.
It's all stays right here. It's spent right here locally.
And understanding those, and I think what's missing sometimes is really understanding in detail the challenges that those small business owners face. Right?
Oh, yeah.
For many
we're
major
crippled.
corporations, they can write off a lot of these expenses.
Yeah.
I love the one of the double swipe charges when you're running credit cards and you're getting charged twice for every transaction, or probably as a brewery, probably 3 times, right? Because you're getting charged for the actual transaction, the tax, and then
the
tip.
credit card, the tax, yeah. Oh, right here at a brewery, I mean, we have 7 different taxes we have to pay on the business side, and then my employee tax and all those other taxes. We pay over $3,000 a month in taxes.
Yep.
And Colorado State tried. Thankfully, it got turned down. But we already pay what's called a manufacturing tax.
Yep.
That's where you pay whenever you brew the beer.
Yep.
Even if it never gets sold, you still have to pay the tax on it being brewed. Colorado State wanted to charge another 5 cents per gallon to every brewery and distillery in the state of Colorado on top of the already, because it's not a tax, because you have to vote on a tax.
Right.
It's a fee.
Yep.
They wanted to add a 5 cent fee. Thankfully, that one got turned down. But I mean, you look at how much we pay in and how much we pay this city, this county, this state, all the different taxes, and they just want to keep adding more on there. And yet they'll give a big business like, let's say, Amazon coming in here.
Yep.
They got a huge tax break because they guaranteed, like 3,000 jobs or 300 jobs. It was one of the two. And then 2 years later, laid off 40% of their workforce. Yep. So they got the money, they got the tax break, they got all that. Now, if you took that same amount of tax break you gave to Amazon here in Colorado Springs, instead gave it to split it up amongst every brewery and restaurant in this town, we could have all hired more employees than Amazon and boosted the economy of this town.
Yep. Yep.
But all we see is those big businesses, those big numbers.
And I think that's the fundamental difference between the decision that people have to make this November is, do you believe in this trickle-down economics model that we've got 40 years of data that says, no, it doesn't work? Or do you believe in investing in working-class Americans, the average person just like us sitting around the table,
Yes.
that says, if we invest in people like us, the economy thrives? And I love this. And when people sit there and say, well, I'm Make America Great Again. I love when it's again means, when do you think it was so great?
When did it stop?
When was it great?
When was it good?
When was it? And the answer I usually get back from people is, well, the 1950s and 1960s. And I say, okay, what was the top tax rate in the 1960s? I don't know. I was like, it was 70%.
Yeah.
And I was like, we don't need to go back to that, right? Let's talk about, we can talk about fiscal responsibility, but let's talk about the fact that what made the 50s and 60s great is that we as a society made the decision of, we're going to make investments in hard things.
Yeah.
We're going to make investments in education. We're going to make sure that our communities are able to thrive, and we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And we need to be asking our wealthier Americans, our wealthier neighbors, to pay a little bit more so that we can make those same investments. And the benefit comes back 10, 20-fold when we do it. And we do have the data. The 50s and 60s are that evidence of when you make that investment in working class Americans, we all prosper.
Well, I think we made a huge gamble on, like, when we started shipping all of the recycling over to China and for steel, when we shut down all the steel mills and we stopped producing as many cars, and we got away from the manufacturing and the hardworking jobs, and we were going to transfer over to be the digital future, and everybody's going to have these great jobs in high tech. And the high tech never came. I think that was what hurt us, is we dumped all of the hard physical labor jobs to move over to this high tech industry, but the high tech industry never came, and it bit us in the ass hard, and we're still trying to recover from that.
Yeah.
You know, that used to be a huge thing, and we shut off all the recycling plants, turned it all over, we sold it all to China, and now we're buying all of our steel back from China.
Yep.
That's why so much equipment comes out of China, like a brewing equipment. I had to pay almost double the cost of almost anybody else here in town because I bought American-made brewing equipment. All my stuff in the back there is all made in America, but it cost me almost double what most people were buying stuff from China from.
Yep.
But it was because that's what I wanted. I wanted all American-made stuff here.
Right. Yep.
But it's ridiculous, the difference in the cost. It was made here in country, didn't have to get shipped, and still cost me twice as much.
Yep. Yeah.
That's hard.
It is. It is. And I think that's the challenge of where we're facing, of people want to see more American jobs, of regardless of what industry and how we tackle it, right? We need that sustainability. We need that ability to produce things.
Well, it used to be pride. Things that are made in America.
We have the resources. We have the manpower. There's absolutely no reason we should be outsourcing all of the work.
And again, I think it comes down to investing in your small business owners that see the value of those local supply chains, because it's no longer about a relationship of what it looks like on paper. It's the relationship of, I know my suppliers.
Yeah.
I know what my supply chain looks like, and I'm willing to make that co-investment in
Almost everything in here is bought locally here in Colorado, and sometimes in a few of the other outlying states that we don't grow here in Colorado. That everything I can possibly get my hands on is made right here. These tables were made by a welder down in Pueblo. It was also a veteran. But everything in here it's from here. And we try to keep it that way. So, there you go. I think we're just about out of time. Did you guys have any other questions for him?
Real quick, just one, try and get a good story. So, correct me if I'm wrong, you were an officer most of your time in. You got any good stories of you caught your guys doing something and it's like, You're getting it done, so I didn't see anything.
You know, one of my
your
favorite
E4 Mafia. There's
one
Yeah,
of
some
my
E4 stuff.
I'm not going to incriminate anybody. I will say,
Yeah, no names.
I think one of the funniest stories I have is we were doing a refit in Kandahar, and this was June of 2006. So it is extraordinarily hot.
Oh, yeah.
In Kandahar in June, and so all of us were in the motor pool, and none of us were wearing shirts or hats, so no rank visible. And I'm just kind of there checking on what's going on, and suddenly, like, my driver and my gunner had walked away to do something, and so I'm standing there by my Humvee all by myself, and this master sergeant walks out of this air-conditioned hut, and he's in charge of the whole motor pool. He goes, "Hey, you, move that truck." And I'm looking around, I was like, is he talking to me? And I'm having this moment where I'm like, well, he doesn't know who I am, and I'm not wearing rank, and I can move a Humvee. And so I'm like, okay. And so I just, without questioning it, I was like, no pride, get in the truck, start the Humvee up, go to move it. Next thing I know, he's hooting and hollering, he's waving his arms, and I'm like, what is this guy upset about? And I get out of the truck, and he's like yelling and screaming. He said, "Where's your platoon sergeant?" And I was like, how do I respond to this right now? Should I tell him I'm an officer? And I was like, no, he looks pretty mad. I was like, I'll go get him. And so I go find my platoon sergeant, and I go and I say, "Hey, Sergeant Blackman, the motor sergeant wants to talk to you. I don't know what it's about. I got to go to the talk. I'll be back in a couple hours." A couple hours go by, and I come back. I meet up with the platoon sergeant. He goes, "Sir," he goes, "you drove over a pallet of batteries and caused a hazmat incident."
oh,
He goes, "Please." He goes, "Sergeant so-and-so, first of all, apologizes for yelling at you. He didn't realize you were an officer. But please, next time, find your driver, have him move the truck."
that's pretty good.
That's fantastic.
So funny thing is, because it was the pallet of batteries, and so this actually saved a life. So this mistake saved a life. The battery acid corroded the wiring harness on the Humvee, which disabled the turbocharger. So 3 weeks later, my interpreter is sleeping in front of the truck. My driver had forgotten to fill the truck up with gas that night's mission. So I'm yelling at him to go fill up the truck. And in my mind, I'm thinking, of course he sees the interpreter sleeping in front of the truck. He had to step over him. Again, 30 minutes go by, and the interpreter's now in the medic's office. He almost got run over by the truck. But thankfully, because the turbocharger didn't work, it didn't have the oomph to get over his shoulder.
Yeah, I told you. We added all that crap to the Humvees,
couldn't
and
make
instead of putting a bigger motor in there, they just slapped a turbo in it. Yeah, that little 1.2 liter or 1.4 liter.
Okay.
So that mistake,
That might be the
mistake
best.
saved a life.
The best.
That was good. I think it's one of the best ones we've had
story
on here.
we've gotten so
Oh, I've
far.
got plenty. I had another one. My first patrol, we went out and we were doing a night mission, and so my driver, there was one of the Afghan guards shined a flashlight, and so it washed out all our knots. And so he's like, "Sir, I can't see. I was like, "Well, then stop."
Yeah.
And he keeps driving, and so suddenly we were having this back and forth, and it must have sounded like an old couple arguing. And next thing I know, we stop, and the gunner's like, "Hey, guys," and you just feel the truck just, and I don't know if this is gonna be a video, but you feel the truck just suddenly start to lurch over. He had driven off the road and wound up on this dry riverbed, and the dry riverbed collapsed, and so the Humvee did flip, but it landed on its side. And that was my very first patrol. My team leader, actually, he went on to be a sergeant major, and he told me he shares that story with every class he had in ROTC of talking about the fact that this is what my platoon leader's first patrol was like. But he was very nice about it. He was like, "But you kept your cool." He's like, "You could have fallen apart at that moment, but you kept your cool, you put it together, and you moved on."
That's fantastic.
If you can't see, stop.
You'd be amazed.
You would
that
be amazed.
You have to say
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yeah, this is the military people don't see. We
Yeah,
solve a lot
right,
of problems.
yeah.
but
At
we
one
sure,
point,
we
I
sure
would have been
cause a lot of
surprised.
problems.
I've worked in the service industry long enough.
Yeah. All right.
I've trained people enough. Nope.
So thank you very much for coming on the show, Joe.
Absolutely.
From all of us, we really
was
appreciate
great.
it.
Yeah,
and I genuinely mean it. I absolutely 100% support you, and I hope you win the primaries.
Thank you.
And I really look forward to seeing you in the general election.
And I hope people see the fact that as candidates, we can have that conversation, and the fact that we might have slightly different visions of where we're going, but we're in this to serve the community together, and we can have those civil conversations.
Exactly. It doesn't need to be, you have to hate him because he's a Democrat.
Clean
You have to go
civil race.
Right, exactly.
And we can share beer over it. So.
And we can share beer of it. And cheers to that. You are the first candidate to ever come on our show and actually have a beer.
That's the second time you've told me that.
Yeah.
I really do find that surprising. Like, you're in a bar, we're having a conversation at a brewery.
Yeah.
Why would you not have a beer?
The podcast
Absolutely.
is named after a brewery and called Unhinged. I mean,
Yeah, and I mean, it's something this state is proud of for the
Yeah.
most part. We have, the industry that we do have here. So
It's what makes us special. It's that unique. It's literally the unique flavor that sets our community apart.
love that. That's a great way of putting it. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. And we'll put Joe Reagan's campaign website link in the description below. So go check him out. And honestly, I mean, really, as far as the three people running against me, absolutely, I think you've got it. I think you've got a great shot at this. And I am looking forward to seeing what happens.
It's going to be a great couple months.
Thank you. All right, remember, everybody, don't just do it.
Wackadoo it.